I wish I knew how to quit you.
Then why don't you?
This is Codependent Content, a podcast where my partner and I discuss the TV shows, movies, and video games in which we've formed an unhealthy relationship. My name is Mattias, and my co-host is Shannon Riley. Join us each week as we try to make sense of the media we continually give our hearts against our better judgment, and commiserate with us as we struggle and fail to let go of the characters, stories, and worlds that we are entangled with. Because just when we think we're done with content, it draws us back in. So we wanted to do podcasting because we like talking about stuff, and we realized we can't watch anything without being with each other or in the same room. And we like talking about things. And also, I've been going through this process of showing Shannon different pieces of content that she may have missed, considering she is about 7 years younger than me and just not well versed in cinema, shall we say. What would you say your experience was with cinema before I came along?
I would say casual viewer, and now I would say I'm more of an aggressive viewer.
You love content.
I do love content.
We love content.
I love consuming content.
In this house, we are a content family. Content family, I would say. Anyway, today we're talking about the first episode of The Last of Us, which is very special to us. The Last of Us as a brand, or as a entity, I should say, is very special to us. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to first talk about our experience with The Last of Us and the video game and our anticipation for the show. Then we're going to talk about the show beat for beat. And then we're going to get into more spoilers in terms of game, upcoming things from the game, things like that. And we'll hopefully leave everything out from future stuff in the first section. This will be a spoiler podcast. There will be spoilers throughout for the show, but only for the episode that we've watched. We will try not to spoil anything that will come up or may come up in the future until we get to that section, and we'll talk about that. And today we're also going to answer the burning question: is this a good video game adaptation? Let's find out. So, Shannon, one of the very first things that you got to experience after dating me was The Last of Us. We'd watched a couple movies together, but when we first started dating, I had just finished playing The Last of Us 2, and I couldn't stop talking about it. And so at some point, I played through both games for you. And that was like early on in our relationship. That was about a couple of years ago, I would say. I want to talk about our experience with The Last of Us first, before we get into like the show and the HBO thing, right?
Great.
And so I'll go first because it's gonna be pretty quick. I mean, I started The Last of Us. It was a PS4 remaster. It was on. It was after the pandemic started, so I didn't play The Last of Us, even though it was almost a decade old at this point. I had played it in 2020, and then about 6 months later, The Last of Us 2 came out, and I think is like the best video game experience. It's the best medium on empathy that I've ever seen. And I think it's like a perfect game. I had been a fan of Naughty Dog way before then. In fact, I almost exclusively played just Uncharted games and Naughty Dog games. I unfortunately missed The Last of Us when it first came out, but I was lucky to like eventually get my hands on it. Mm-hmm. I'm glad I played the PS4 remaster. If I'd played it on PS3, I don't know how I would have felt about it. But yeah, I love this game. I love this universe. I think it's amazing storytelling, and it was like the first time that I tried to like follow the creatives, look up the writers, all the the actors and things, just to like be more immersed in like whatever Naughty Dog was going to be doing next,
Mhm.
you know? And it just happened to be that they were going to be working on the show. So that was really exciting. So yeah, that's a little bit of my experience. What's your experience with The Last of Us?
Well, I entered this not giving a shit about video games at all, not thinking, not really understanding why anybody would get like super invested into a video game. And Mattias is right. He had been talking about it for like a couple months about wanting to watch him play this game. And I was like, that sounds like the dumbest shit ever. Why do I want to watch someone? No offense. Like, why am I going to watch you play a video game for 12 hours? And I don't remember how you talked me into it or how it ended up happening or how you beat me down. But 11 hours later, I was just like, okay, play the next one. Like, I'm ready. I want more.
We did do The Last of Us first, right?
Yeah.
Before Uncharted?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I was just making sure.
We didn't play Uncharted together until we moved to California.
Right.
So yeah, I was just so taken by surprise because I wasn't expecting to fall in love with a video game. But I think that's where my like knowledge has broadened a little bit because it's not about what I thought it was about, which was shivving zombies and looking for supplies and like learning game mechanics, which always stresses me out. You just get so invested in the relationships that are happening that it didn't feel that I was watching someone play a video game. It felt like I was like watching a movie or like watching a really long movie or a story.
Yeah. For those who don't know, just to clarify a little bit, I played through the entire game while she watched. You know, and what I love about Naughty Dog video games is that you can do that. It's almost like watching a film. Same with the Uncharted games. Like, you don't have to be playing to actually be immersed in a story, you know? And it's almost easier especially for someone who doesn't play video games.
Yeah.
But you did recently play through The Last of Us yourself a couple months ago.
The Last of Us is what made me decide that I might want to start playing video games because, and we're not there yet, obviously, but The Last of Us Part 2 is where I decided that I was like, I love these characters. I'm in love with this world. Like, I want to be a part of it from the driver's seat, not just the passenger seat as a viewer watching you play. And it was just as exciting and devastating playing it for myself as it was watching. And I would argue I did like watching you play Uncharted, but The Last of Us is different. Like,
Sure.
I feel like it's
a different game.
Yeah. It's
Uncharted
insane.
was a, like, how do you do like a action adventure blockbuster and turn it into a video game and get a gamer immersed in that, which that was kind of like how it was touted. And then this was just like almost like a slow burn, like thriller drama, you know, like kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, there's still action involved in it.
Yeah.
But it's not quite, and it's a zombie game, you know?
Right.
So there's, as opposed to like puzzles and action and shooting them up, there's more emphasis on stealth and things like that.
Yeah.
You know?
And I feel like because in ways, The Last of Us can be repetitive in the sense that everything you do is like, okay, you get out of an encounter, now you're looking for supplies, getting yourself ready to engage in a different encounter. And you're either going to be like stealthing and stabbing or maybe shooting. And again, I thought that was going to be really repetitive to watch too, but the story is so important to it that it's almost like the important parts are like the cutscenes and what's happening between the characters. And then it's like, these are just little like filler chunks of, oh, I get to like stab and run and be a little anxious when a bloater pops out or something. So it just, it completely changed my opinion on like what video games are and what video games are capable of and like different mediums to tell stories through. So.
Yeah. A little spoiled, I think, because it's a very good game. You know, it's one of those few games that get like 10s out of 10 scores and things like that. So not every video game can be that, unfortunately.
Oh, I know.
But yeah, so you played through it recently. It was your first experience playing a video game. and now like the show, you hear about the show coming out. Like, what did you think? Were you excited?
Just wild balls out excitement, honestly, because like I said, it was so fresh in my mind too. Like I knew how deep my love for Ellie runs, that just getting to spend more time with her in any capacity is something that just had me super excited. And I wasn't part of any of like the apparent internet toxicity around Bella Ramsey's casting for Ellie. I think maybe because I didn't have 10 years to be married to like Ashley's original performance and be afraid of what video adaptations do, because I've never played any other video game, so I don't know how that like one-to-one comparison is. Like people were complaining about Halo and like other things.
Yeah, so you're not very familiar since you don't even play video games.
Yeah.
The journey that we've had with like video game adaptations.
Right. But apparently everyone is like, they're not great often.
They've never been very good, but neither has been, I mean, there's plenty of adaptations that are just downright bad, and it's not exclusive to video games. I think it's just like, whereas every now and then we'll get like a good book adaptation, you know, or even like a good comic book adaptation, which we've been kind of getting, or even, and those kinds of things. Like we just haven't had like a home run record of video game adaptations. And that goes way back to like the 80s and 90s and earlier, you know. So that's been like decades, you know. And there have been some things that have like, you know, been well accepted, but it's just not always been like a good track record. So yeah, this is not only your first time playing a video game, your first time, so you have no expectations kind of going in of like the
disappointment that I could have suffered. Yeah, I was just excited to get to spend more time with characters that I already fell in love with.
I think for me, coming from like knowing the bad video game adaptations we've had, and we'll talk more about if this one is a good one or not later on, because I think that's the question that I want to like answer. But when I heard about this, knowing again how they'd also, we forgot to mention that Uncharted also got an adaptation recently.
Yeah, and it was dumb as hell.
And it was bad.
No offense.
It was, and that went through like a decade of them trying to like figure out how to make that movie in different iterations, and it was just it just wasn't good. And so like that's kind of like a general sense of like what does, so like we'd even had, even though the weird thing is Naughty Dog games have such a good, like I said, they could translate well to film because you don't have to play them to enjoy them. You could just watch the games, you know, and you could watch someone else play it. You could watch someone playing it online, and you could be totally immersed in it because they should translate really well into film. So I wasn't that like scared about it, but then we get like Uncharted and we're like, they could still screw this up. That could always happen. The things that put my mind at ease were the fact that Craig Mazin, the showrunner from Chernobyl, was coming back to do this. I believe one of the directors and the DPs were also coming back from Chernobyl. Very good show. And Craig Mazin is a well established screenwriter, mostly from his Script Notes podcast. But I think Chernobyl just helped to like firmly establish him as like someone that we can trust. And he loved the video game. We knew he loved the video game from hearing him talk about it on his podcast. So that put my mind at ease like already. And then it was the fact that Neil Druckmann, the director of the Last of Us games and the writer, was going to be heavily involved.
Right.
And he's even, I believe, directing a few episodes. And so there was like more things about that helped ease like any sort of tension. And then there was the fact that it was going to be a show on HBO.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to do something in a medium that like usually spans like when you're sitting at the game, like 30 to 40 hours for a AAA game, you got to do it as a series, you know? there's just so much content, so much can go into it. Like when you try and stuff all that into like 1 2-hour chunk, like if they try to put this first game into 2 hours, I don't know what that would have been, you know?
Yeah, I was reading that there were like multiple failed movie pitches with Maisie Williams and like Caitlin Dever trying to shove the story into a 2-hour movie window. And the reason that it failed is because he didn't like believe that 2 hours would do it justice. So it's great that we get so much time with the characters, but I also like that in the same interview, he was saying that he doesn't want to add, like, there won't be any filler. He wants to take the time that he needs, but he doesn't want to take more time than is necessary. So I feel that because of that, we're going to get a really, like, thoughtful, clean, thorough presentation of, like, these characters in this world, which I think is really exciting.
Great. So let's talk about The Last of Us. Let's talk the show.
Yeah.
Episode 1, titled When You're Lost in the Darkness. The full phrase being, when you're lost in the darkness, search for the light, which is a Firefly saying. We'll get to that. So yeah, let's talk about the show. And I forgot to mention the casting, I think, is also just great.
On point. Yeah.
And we'll talk more about that. Let's start with the prologue.
Okay.
1968.
Before we get started, I just want to say, I'm glad that I'm watching this, having the background knowledge of what The Last of Us is and what's coming. But there's a part of me that wishes that I could watch this with just fresh eyes. You know what I mean? Like go in, not know what's waiting for me, be curious about this like mystery pandemic that's happening. There's a part of me that kind of wishes that I didn't already have the roadmap. But I also think having the roadmap is making me more excited and making me look for other things that I know will like come back later in the season. But that was the very first thing I thought of. As soon as the prologue started, I was like, oh, imagine like hearing this for the first time.
Yeah. I think we'll talk more about that in terms of like video game adaptations and spoilers too, because I want to get into that a little bit more. Okay, so starting with the prologue, 1968. This is not a spoiler, but this section is not in the video game at all. This is a Craig Mazin. I think they even mentioned it in the podcast afterwards. This is a Craig Mazin invention.
Yeah.
Mostly just to give us kind of like a rundown, I think, of what could be the next like pandemic, you know, and making the cordyceps fungus make sense. What did you think of this?
I just thought it was great. It was a good way to ease people into like, here's everything you need to know before the story really starts without being superfluous and boring, you know what I mean? Or too like campy. It was just very straightforward. Here's everything you need to know. I also kind of like the implications of the fact that they knew this was a possibility for so long and just kind of sat on it. And then it comes like, it explodes. It like comes into the world. And
yeah, interesting. I don't like that.
Why not?
I think that I think we'll get into this. This is the kind of a thing where we get into like, this is not just only like an adaptation of a video game. This is a zombie show, right? Or a zombie film. And as to start off here, to kind of give you an idea, like to make it real, again, it's just, to me, I'll get into this later. I think to me, this kind of ruins part of what I liked about the beginning of the game, is that like it just kind of throws you right in.
Yeah.
And I feel like, because this is a fictional conversation between people. You know, they're not. These are not actual experts talking about this thing in 1968. And it's like, okay, so there was like a warning, I guess, and we didn't heed it. Like, okay, great. So now you're just like, kind of. But this didn't really happen in life. We never actually had this like warning, you know, and it's kind of making something up for kind of like no reason to kind of like make it make sense for like these humans. Like I kind of like that if we don't know like how or why, you know,
Mhm.
or like we don't make sense of it. When that's just like my opinion. I don't know. This only serves the purpose of like exposition, you
Right.
know. I could probably, if I were ever to like revisit the show, I could easily skip the scene and not miss anything,
Sure.
you know. There's one good shot where like he starts talking about what this could turn us into, and then it like starts showing the audience, and they're like just kind of clearly looking like zombies, just standing still, like looking at them talking. And I think that's a fun moment. But other than that, I'm not exactly sure like why I needed it. I think it is for people who have never played the game.
Yeah.
But even the game didn't really give us all this.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
know, it never tries to explain a fungal infection in a sense, you know.
Mhm.
I mean, we kind of get it over the course of the game, I believe, like little bits and pieces, but it doesn't ever try to like really set up this as like a like what could happen, you know.
Yeah.
Like, because we're already in it, we know what happened. It just happened.
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
That's true.
so that's just my take on it. While I enjoyed it at first, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I knew it was exposition. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like get through this. But then I also was like, well, if I'm just like waiting for the show to start, then I don't know why we needed it.
Right.
I will say it didn't get me like less excited for anything.
Right.
I wasn't sitting there like, oh no, this is a bad start to the
No,
thing.
'cause
But
it's not.
but it's more so like thinking about it later. I was like, we could have maybe not had it.
Yeah, we could have just jumped into 2003 or whatever.
Probably. Yeah. So let's jump to 2003,
Okay.
which is different. I want to say, so the original game came out around 2012,
Mm-hmm.
I want to say. Or 2000.
13.
I think it was like 2012, maybe 2013. But somewhere around there. And so I believe that like, I don't know that it was they ever set a time. I'm having trouble recalling, and I should have looked this up.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can look this up as a fact checker. But 2012 probably could have been either when the prologue was set, or it could have been like 20 years before. We are going to have a 20-year time gap. I don't know. But setting this in 2003 was very, very interesting because this is set 5 months, May, April, June, July, August. 5 months after we invaded Iraq. So that's interesting. So then you get like the news reports and stuff like that. That's neither here nor there, but it does show like a little bit of the tensions that are like going on like at that time,
Mm-hmm.
being set after 2001. Whereas I don't think the original game had that kind of tension.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just really interesting. Shout out to Austin because it's set in Austin, which the original game was as well in terms of the prologue. But it never really showcased Austin. Also, I don't think this does either because I don't think they shot it in Austin.
They shot it in Canada.
So they do get a little nice shot of the skyline of the Austin skyline, but
And that's it.
I think that's Compton because there's nothing that I recognize that could have been Austin. So yeah, what are you thinking? And what do you think of this prologue? How do they recasting Sarah? I say recasting, casting Nico Parker as Sarah. I think she did great. I say recasting because she's a little older, I think. Or she's supposed to be maybe the same age. I think she feels older than the original Sarah.
Yeah, she feels more mature or
Mhm.
like something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Video game Sarah had like a different type of innocence or like bubbliness or ingenueness that I think HBO Sarah feels more like a teen that loves her dad, but like a teenager nonetheless.
Yeah. So we're introduced to Sarah first, and she becomes our like point of view character through this entire prologue.
Mm-hmm.
I like Nico Parker.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's amazing. I don't know how I feel about, there's like little moments where it feels like she's taking care of Joel, Pedro Pascal. Which I don't know that I felt, I don't know if I liked.
Why not?
Because there's something about the childlikeness of Sarah, and we'll get to it later, that just makes things like more tragic, you know? And the fact that like Joel was like a decent dad. He wasn't, you know, he was working a lot, but like he didn't need necessarily to be taken care of or to be mothered or anything, you know?
Yeah.
Or to be reminded to do anything. Not that I recall. But
yeah, I would agree with you there. I feel like in the show version, for me, it read more like he has a one-track mind of doing the work that needs to be done, so then he can like come home and spend as much time as possible being a dad. And because of that, I can see him like not eating because he would need to leave, or not taking care of himself because he feels that going to work and then getting done is more important than taking care of himself. And I think that Sarah sees that in him. So I'm not so sure if it's like, oh, I have to take care of you. It's like, I'm just making this easier. She understands him and understands his pattern and just kind of knows like, here's what needs to be done. And of course the man's going to get up and drink coffee because he has to leave in 20 minutes. And she's like, I've already made breakfast for me. I've made breakfast for you. So I'm not sure if it's as like, I didn't get the read that Joel is like not weak, but like weak or lacking in any way. It just seems more like a team, two team members working together because the one understands what the other one needs.
Right. Sure. I mean, I could understand that an older Sarah might have gotten there. I don't know that I like getting her there here, you know?
Because Game Sarah was such, it felt like a young girl. I don't know age-wise. I don't know what ages everyone's supposed to be, but Game Sarah feels more like maybe 12, young 13.
I imagine her being like just on the verge of like puberty. You know?
But show Sarah feels more like maybe like 14, 15.
Yeah.
You know? And I even just that little bit of age, I think brings with it a different level of maturity. Yeah, that it doesn't cheapen anything that happens in the rest of the prologue, but I do think kind of takes away like a little bit of that element of what losing like a really young, just like childlike person is. Yeah.
So beyond that, she's great. They're making breakfast. He's getting ready to go to work. Gabriel Luna playing
Tommy
comes in. I think he's pitch perfect.
Well, he's also from Austin, so he said he loved Tommy, the actor, and he was like stoked to play Tommy because he felt that they were on the same page. I'm
connected to Gabriel Luna professionally in various ways because I work, you know, like the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. I've worked with someone who's worked, you know, who was friends with him. My old roommate was friends with him. Well, they worked together on a film that he produced, and so he was talking all about Gabriel Luna when he went to Terminator Salvation or whatever the movie it was, and which he did great there. It's great seeing him here, and I think he's a pitch perfect Tommy.
Yeah.
Interesting that again, well, they're getting ready, blah blah. We see later that he has a Desert Storm bumper sticker on his car. Again, a very clear indication of something that's like of this era, you know? I don't recall Tommy ever having any sort of military training in the video game, But I think that's a very interesting thing to add. But yeah, in terms of like the characterization, I just love. So the introduction to our characters here, pretty great. You know, I don't think we get much of Joel here. I think the first characterization we get that really like shows Joel that I recognize is when the neighbors are trying to invite Sarah over after school, and he's like, you know what, you go over there and you tell them all about my diet,
My Atkins
you know,
diet.
he's like you go be a nice daughter for, you know, like, like, and there's like a little bit of that like fatherly Joel that we love so much, you know, like he's in charge, he's, you know, the kind of thing. And Pedro, he's doing so well to kind of like really embody like this character, you know. So yeah, they go. The rest of the prologue, she goes off to school, they go off to work. She gets his watch fixed. Anything you want to say about any of these moments?
Yeah, they're two small things. So I have a tendency to hyperfixate on things that don't matter. And in the following order, here I go. I loved that while they're at the breakfast table, he specifically taps his wrists, realizes he doesn't have his watch, and then checks his phone for the time. I loved that little, like, just nod to the fact that then Sarah gets his watch fixed, and it's just superfluous, but whatever. I really liked that. Also, Joel is a Libra. Happy birthday, Libra baby.
September 26th.
Would not have guessed that about him, but okay, ready to rock. Another thing I was hyperfixated on was the knife that Sarah takes out of the drawer. I feel that more than just to show us her character, I feel like that knife is gonna just be somewhere. I feel like they spent such a long time lingering on like how the knife looked with the handle and the horses on the blade. I feel that it was a really specific moment. And if more of the intention was to show me like Sarah's point of view on the knife, they really didn't look at Sarah at all. We just see her hands and we spend like 7 seconds on the blade. So I'm interested as to like why they would put that shot in there. And I don't have any interesting guesses yet.
Yeah, I think you're going to be sorely disappointed.
That's
that
fine.
knife is not going to show up again.
Y'all remember this.
I think the knife is specifically to show, especially later on when we get to learn more and more about Ellie. I think the knife was there because, especially if Sarah is supposed to skew a little bit younger than what Ellie is, because Ellie's 14. If Sarah's supposed to be skew a little bit younger, then we're seeing that she's interested. You know, I think it's like a little grown up moment. Like she's like kind of growing up, you know, or never been interested. Maybe she wonders why he has it, but like it's a knife. It's not like a hunting knife. It's not like a knife you go to war with. It's like it's a knife you could whittle a stick with, like he probably has it when he goes camping or whatever. So it's not very dangerous thing, but she's curious about it, and she's curious about the danger of it. And I think that's a very interesting thing when we get to like Ellie.
Yeah.
And I think it's just that juxtaposition. And I do think, again, another tragedy that she never ever gets to explore that side, which good thing, bad thing, I don't know, but she'll never get to explore like any sort of kind of like brush with danger, you know, in that sense. Or see herself as anything, you know, but a girl going to school. That's what I think that is.
Okay. Well, I'm on knife watch. So, and then another thing that I was really focused on that probably has no meaning at all. In the little sequence while she's at school in English class, there's a 5-second shot of a girl with a silver bracelet.
Yes.
And she's just like staring at this bracelet.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something. I don't think at first I thought it was her being like, oh yeah, don't forget I have to fix that watch. Like I'm waiting for time to pass because like I have another task to do. But with how like zone outy that whole little sequence felt. I just wonder, again, what's the point of showing us this girl who's like fidgeting with her bracelet specifically?
Well, again, this is a really interesting thing. This is why I like talking to you about these things, because this is an interesting tidbit in that you view things very differently. I think to me, it was very clear that like we're supposed to think, we don't know. It could be just the girl fidgeting, but I think we're also led to believe that like while ambiguous, she's probably infected. And the early signs of the infection are like this like twitching thing, you know, because it's taking over like the nervous system is what this fungus is doing. And I guess it didn't spread as fast
as it's
unless you're bitten, you know, at that point in time. I think that is what we're led to believe, that like she's noticing that, but it's also a teenager and she's just twitching, you know, so it doesn't really have to be. I think it's supposed to be like an ambiguous thing.
Okay.
But I think it's supposed to be an early sign.
Well, I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, so she gets the watch fixed. We see some cops go by. The store closes in a hurry, and she goes home. Well, first she goes to the Adlers. Anything else you want to talk about?
Not before the Adlers, no.
Right. So she goes to the Adlers. Another scene invented just for the show. We never ever get to meet the neighbors. In fact, majority of this has been invented for the show at this point. And so now we're with the Adlers. She's doing schoolwork. She's helping do this thing. What did you think of these scenes with the Adlers?
Well, as you know, or may not know, I suppose, in the game, she is attacked by the neighbors. And I feel that getting to spend time with the people that you then are like the first people that you get to see really impacted by this wild infection is a lot of fun. It makes it just that much like more human and that much more connective. But even more than spending time with the neighbors, it's the fact that we have the grandma who can't move, can't speak, can't do anything, and then you just like seeing that dichotomy of what she was before and after the infection takes over. I think is like the winning statement, unless you know the friendships we made along the way. It's like seeing that physicality and that takeover was my favorite. Again,
another thing that I think it was interesting to see that clearly the grandma was infected, scary little scene, that kind of thing.
Loved it.
I don't know that this was necessary. I'm torn because it feels like, while I can understand what you're saying, it didn't seem like she wanted to hang out with the Adlers in the first place. She's very like distant towards the Adlers. She's also like clearly like has to deal with like this Mrs. Adler being like this very outspoken Christian, you know, people need to be saved kind of thing. And like she has kind of like an aversion to that, or so, you know, Sarah has an aversion to that. And I'm like, okay, so like what, like, so it's not like these are people close to Sarah or them. It's they're just like these old people that like, you know, they're not even represented as like nice, like empathy. Like it feels like she doesn't ever really want to be there, you know?
I also feel like that can kind of point to like Sarah character reveal, because this whole section of the show, like you get so ingratiated to Sarah because like you think you are Sarah. You think Sarah's going to be your anchor, or at least I did. And same with the game. You think Sarah's going to anchor you. And to do that, I feel that we need to put her in spaces where she's able to interact with other people. So it's like you see her get this watch, you get to learn more about her personality by the way she interacts with other people, and the fact that no, she probably doesn't want to be there, but they like her dad wants her to go, and like she has that duty and responsibility to go give her company to people even if she doesn't necessarily want to. And I think that speaks to who she is as a person and how she respects like what her dad wants her to do as well. Because he did say like, go over afterwards. So I kind of like seeing that because I think it shines a little bit more of a light on her respect for her father and her respect for others, but also the fact that while she's there the whole time, she's like doing homework and looking for another little gift for her dad, and then like tries to leave at the earliest convenience. I think it's just kind of funny. So I don't mind it, but I do feel that it was inserted more to set me up for what is going to be shown like a couple minutes later.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm again not so sure that it does much for me. And it was weird that they made Miss Adler like extremely like Christian, to the
kind of weird, right? Like for no reason.
To the point where I'm like, I'm not exactly sure if like they want us to not be rooting for her to be, and I'm like, so are we scared of the Bible Belt Texans now? So I have no idea. So I was kind of weirded out. Mostly that I was like, why are we, besides the fact that like, okay, we see these people and how they live, and then like we put a face to these names that we never actually saw before. It's not really show me much that I got later. And as we move on to the next scene, which is kind of the start of where we originally meet Sarah in the video game, she walks out, she goes back home, and she sees some like jets fly over. And that to me is like what I want to say is like the last thing that about this entire prologue that I didn't like. Because again, there's something about, these are just like, now we're just like in a zombie movie. We're fully in the territory of like, what are the things that we can show that like something's going on in the world, something else is happening, like things are, like we saw the cops, we saw the like kid twitching, we saw the grandma obviously, and then we see these like jets, the people like close the door. We've been hearing like things on the news and stuff like that, but like it's becoming like a little bit cliche at this point, a little bit like tropey, and we've seen this all in like other like zombie films, and I'm like, okay, I get it. There's something happening. Okay, yeah. I get it. And I don't. And even throughout this whole thing, Sarah has been walking through her entire day, almost a little bit, I don't know, on edge, or a little bit like she notices everything. Like she already knows something's wrong. And I don't like that, because it should have just been like a normal day for her. Yeah. Like she shouldn't have noticed anything, but all these things are like happening around her that like she has to take notice of, because we take notice of them, and it doesn't, and it's like if all these signs are like there, like why is no one saying it? Like, that kind of thing. Yeah. And it feels kind of weird to me, because again, I was like, if Sarah's so aware of these things, it makes her less of the kid that I remember from the game.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. It almost, I think this goes hand in hand with the fact that you don't love like the very beginning, because I almost think it might have been more fun if the way you're going to hook your audience into this zombie show, which is so much more than zombies, but is by giving them that little teaser. Like, here's the crazy thing that can happen. This fungus takes over your fucking brain and controls every aspect of your body. Cool, nice and fast. And then instead of showing us like all the military planes, all the cops, all the stuff on the news, you leave it up to the audience to infer through, although apparently I'm too stupid to, like the kid twitching in the classroom, the grandma, and maybe even more subtle than that, because you've already planted in the viewer's brain that this is a parasite that takes over your body. And it's a physicality, and that's how it starts. You see it manifest physically before like it mutates, and then they start feeding and spreading. So I almost feel like that might have been more interesting, because then it could have been shot in ways where the viewer catches like those tics and those twitches, and then maybe the grandma is the biggest one that you see, but Sarah doesn't need to be like, here's all the news reports, here's all of this. So then when hell does finally break loose, it feels like more of a more of an explosion instead of a like you've been like cookie crumbing me all the way to this point and I followed you here.
Sure. I mean, it could have been that. I think it's just the fact that like Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann are apparently just in zombie film mode. It seems like they wanted to do this. I can have fun with a zombie film. These things can be fun. I think that's fine.
I don't dislike it.
I think it's just a difference that I don't like per se. I think again we'll getting into it later of how the game did these things. I just it's made for people who are not aware, and it's making this up to be like a zombie show,
right?
And spoiler alert, this won't be a zombie show.
Yeah.
This is zombies are present, but it is making this up to be like a zombie show. And I don't know, and you can have fun with that. I just don't know why exactly we needed it when this is like the least important thing about The Last of Us.
Yeah.
But we do get our first scene that like matches the video game, which is Sarah giving Joel the fixed watch. Cute little moment. I don't have much to say here. I love Pedro doing his like, oh, is it working? You know, this is different because I think in the game it was a new watch, if I recall correctly. But this was fixing his old watch. Do you remember?
I thought it was a new watch too. I thought she got him a watch, but I don't remember.
So like, which makes more sense with why he would be wearing later a broken watch for 20 years, because it was a gift from her, even if like
that she picked out.
Who knows if he would have liked it or if he would have worn it for that long, you know, and things like that. But the fact that it was a fixed watch, it was his watch and he needed it clearly, you know, still a good characterization. I think mostly like shows that like she wouldn't have money to go out to buy a new watch, so she had to take, you know, so like that makes a little bit more sense too. So there's some things there, but I mean, overall, it's a cute, fun little moment. She falls asleep. We get a little moment with Joel having to break Tommy out, having to go pick up Tommy from jail because some guy hit him, you know, which and we hear in the background like people raging at like the prison or whatever, you know, because like there's clearly like something happening, like and we know later that the cordyceps, well, we know from the game lore that the cordyceps fungus taps into like this anger, rage, aggression mechanic, you know, it makes people more aggressive, right? So you're kind of, again, getting more hints there. We didn't get that in the game, but now we know like why he was missing. Because before Sarah would just wake up in the middle of the night and Joel isn't there. So Joel's gone picking up Tommy. In this scene, she wakes up. She's finding no news. We hear explosions in the background. We hear helicopters. And then the dog from next door comes and bangs on her window. She tries to bring it home to the Adlers. It runs away.
A+ dog acting. Just.
Do you think Sarah would go into this house? This is just for our benefit.
I know. I think there's a curiosity in her.
Yeah.
Because all day, kind of like what you mentioned, she's been on edge all day. She's been looking for answers somewhere in some capacity all day. I think that forcing the interaction with the dog and then having to bring the dog over to the Adler's house is a great way to get her there.
Yeah.
I don't think if the dog wasn't there, I don't think she would have just like wandered over. But of course, once you're there and you see the door open and the dog's acting weird and you know something's been like wrong all day, I can see a part of her being like, you know, like look behind the curtain, like what's here.
This is again a different thing. I know I was going to say we were going to talk about it later, but this is a big change. Sarah goes toward the danger. Maybe again, this is supposed to mimic the knife, you know, like where she like feels the knife edge, you know, with her thumb. This is a Sarah that's going to kind of go towards something. So, you know, and she's going to check up on people.
Yeah.
But the door is wide open and she hears a crashing. I think first instinct is to call the cops or something, you
or
know,
to
like,
run,
yeah,
like go home, lock the door.
or to go get someone else, you know, like, but instead she goes in there, she finds some blood. She finds, Mr. Adler, like, dying, and then the grandmother Adler, Mima or whatever,
Mima.
Nana, I can't remember, gnawing on Mrs. Adler, and then she runs. Joel and Tommy show up at the nick of time, and they kill her. And then what happens is just Sarah has a reaction to this. She's like, I can't believe you killed her, you know? Slightly different from the game, same moment. I think the only thing that I don't like again is that we're getting a Sarah that like kind of is taking more charge and you know, whereas like in the video game, we are playing as Sarah, a little girl, and we're not going into any danger. Like, you know, the moment that danger comes, like we're like fighting to protect her and get her away from it.
Yeah.
You know? So we empathize with this girl not wanting to be like near any of that.
Yeah. It also really offers an avenue for Joel to be the protector, the father, that like that vest that he wears so aggressively now, even as you get further into his story, like he is a dad at his core. And that's not diminishing the relationship between older children and their parents, but there is something really unique about having a child be dependent on you for news, for help, for travel, for assistance, for safety. And I think there is, again, just a little bit of a difference where show Sarah has more self-agency. She feels a little older, a little more capable, a little more opinionated in whatever capacity. Whereas game Sarah, you are a child scared, waiting for your dad. Like,
which I think is good because we do get a little bit more characterization of Sarah than we probably would have gotten, you know?
Yeah.
Again, so I don't know. It's like it's different to me, you know? So I didn't dislike these changes per se a lot of the time, but I do think like it is you're getting a different type of feeling from it, you know? We move, they run. I think this more or less plays out exactly as we expect. They're trying to get out of town. They run past a burning house. Some people trying to like flag them down. They run into like traffic. Everyone's got the same idea. They try to cut across a field. They run into the army. All pretty much works out very similar, you know, as opposed to like going past a hospital, you know, but at the very least, like this is all happening like game for game. We actually get like two major things that are beat for beat from the game. That becomes important later because there's a third thing that happens that becomes like a misdirect. But we see like planes are like landing. It seems like they're being forced to land like quickly and in succession. Who cares? Like they're not getting in line or waiting. They're just landing.
Is that what that is?
I think so.
I thought they were taking off. I thought they were trying to escape.
Maybe they were taking
then
off
when the plane rests.
I could not tell what was going on. You're right. Maybe they were all taking off. That makes more sense actually. I didn't know what was. I didn't know if they were going up or down.
Yeah.
And then they get into this town outside of like San Marcos. Doesn't actually exist, but you know, as far as I'm aware. And then a plane crashes and the car is stranded. A car almost hits them. And that is like the third moment. I think they, you know, things come in threes. And I think that's supposed to be a fake out for like video game people because like you saw like, oh, there's the house. Oh, there's the family like trying to get in the car. Oh, like, watch out, Tommy. Here comes the car. They're going to get hit and it doesn't hit them. Yeah. And it's a fun. So there's subtle changes that like help make you. I love everything about this scene. Not only because like they added some things that I just really loved. When they cut across the field, 2 trucks are just like, yeah, we're going to.
Yeah, I like
and I'm just
that
like,
too.
yeah, fuck yeah, because that would happen.
Yes.
And then, you know, and they keep going. And like I love when they run over the Adlers who had clearly turned to us. They clearly turned. They run them over, and then the neighbor's like, "What the
Yeah,
Joel?"
like,
you
yeah.
know, and then you
he gets
see him
attacked.
like get attacked like in
Yeah.
the background. Those are like these. This is where to me like the show's finally like starting. You know, and it's not just because like it mimics a lot about the game, but it is like we're finally like getting into like what we came here for.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, the plane crashes. Joel and Tommy and Sarah get separated. Sarah has a twisted or maybe broken ankle. You know, they have to run from a runner zombie.
Which I loved.
Yeah.
I loved the physicality of the infected is already so cool. And I liked, you know, I know they worked on physicality for the mocap in the game, but there's something so fucking cool about seeing a person chase you like that. The abandon
and to toss themselves like
whoever that
completely,
like actor,
yeah.
dancer, whoever is embodying that first runner that you see. I have it written in my notes twice, like flings himself over the table, and the way that his energy comes back to chase is like, it's feral and it's out of control, and it's beautiful. I don't know who that person is, but they fucking kill it.
It's all momentum too.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if they don't catch what they're catching, they can't turn a corner.
Yeah, that's so cool.
I love that like it gives you like a fear, but also like a way of like understanding how these things work, you know? Or at least this version of it, because we see later there's gonna be different variants of these guys. So yeah, love that. Everything, no notes. Pretty good.
Perfect.
And then we get into the tragedy, you know.
The first of many.
The Joel and Sarah. Joel's carrying Sarah this whole time as they're running, and Joel and Sarah get saved by an army guy in with like a machine gun and a gas mask or whatever. At least in the game, there's a gas mask. You barely see his face here. You're not supposed to. This moment is, we know what's coming for us. We've played the game. I think you immediately started crying.
I did.
When we watched this. Both times that we watched this. But yeah, they try and make their case. I love this writing here because the soldier gets a line where he repeats 3 times.
I knew you were going to mention
Yes,
that.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And there's like, we know what's being said on the other side of that radio. You know, even in the video game, they did a thing where he's like, "Are you sure?" You know, or he says something else, you know, but here is like, you know what's being said because you know the sound of a soldier, and Joel knows the sound of a soldier who's about to follow orders that he may be reluctant to follow, but he's determined to do it. Joel knows immediately. And unfortunately can't stop it. He shoots at them. Luckily, they get saved by Tommy. Sarah has been shot, though. One of the most devastating moments in the game and here, played amazingly by Nico and Pedro Pascal. Just amazing moment. Him trying that. Pedro earned everything that he needed to, like right here. In terms of like playing Joel. And I think again, an amazing moment. And I love the choice, this was in the video game too, the choice to like not be able to get, like, she doesn't say anything, you know, she's like having trouble like
She's like hyperventilating
breathing.
and
He
screaming
tries to like put pressure, and she like screams a little bit because of the pressure, you know. And it's just devastating,
Yeah.
you know.
And the little ways that she like pushes him away
Yeah.
too, like because of the pain.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's so sad.
Yeah, is there anything else to say about that?
From the yes sirs, which also hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so pretty. Like looking at that soldier with the way the light's coming through and like that little bit of fog. Like it's such a pretty, to me, like image. But I love watching Joel, because I have written here like the very first "we're not sick"
Yeah.
is so like just desperate, because he hears it. Even if you don't know, you know. You hear the yes sirs, you hear how that's gonna land. He knows what's coming, and in his last like tiny bit of like hope and plea comes out in his like "we're not sick," and then the second "we're not sick" sounds like such a resignation. And that hurt my feelings too, just the way that you can listen to a soldier say a line 3 times and then Joel say the same line 2 times, and it's 5 different feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I thought was really delightful. And then yeah, Sarah's death is in a non-morbid way like really beautiful to watch, because all of the body language of that actor like portraying death and like how pain would feel, and like how it like climbed up her body and how parts of her body would start to go rigid. Like, I don't know. I just think it was really thoughtful, and it did remind me. Is it almost shot for shot with like the game?
Not a lot of these are very shot for shot. I'd say this is hard to like not be close to it, because it very much like is. I wouldn't say it's like shot for shot. But it's very close in terms of like him being there, and you know.
Yeah.
Same thing with On the Couch. The blocking's very similar.
Yeah.
You know, like, but a lot of these, even when they do things like could be shot for shot, but they make them slightly differently. Mostly because like you can't always have the same locations, because you're not making them up. You have to find them, and then you know, like blocking will change because of that. You know, and these are different and based on the locations where you can place the camera and stuff.
I wanted to ask you. I kind of got lost in the momentum of the whole them driving in the truck up until the plane crash. And I know I already mentioned I like that you have that backseat view, similar to in the game. Like you are grounded in Sarah's perspective of the chaos that's happening, which I really like. Was that shot as a oneer? Like trying to be a oneer?
No. Because
there's a really long time where you don't see a cut. Like the camera swivels to catch different actors in different places.
I want to say like I didn't notice, because it doesn't, because they definitely have to cut back and forth, you know. It's not a oneer, I want to say. I'd have to go back and look at it.
Yeah.
But one thing I did notice, and this is something I also needed to go back and verify, is that Sarah's death is the first time we hear music from this entire prologue. From the moment she wakes up to like here, there may have been music while they're like running, like a little bit of like a ticking or something or whatever, you know, like a little bit of percussion, but it's not like as apparent, because I meant to, like, on our second watch through, to pay attention to that, but I totally forgot. But the first time I noticed that there was music, because I do recognize that there was a lack of music throughout the rest of the prologue. First time I noticed that there's music is when Sarah's dying, you know? So I know that's very interesting in terms of like the filmmaking and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know about a oneer or anything that I recall, because I think they had to make certain cuts here and there. Yeah, and then we're gonna move on from that section. I just want to say, like, I don't know why I have this written down, but like, I don't know why, but I feel like any filmmaker out there should never have a ringtone in their film like ever again. Like I think that like there's something so satisfying about a phone vibrating on a table.
Yeah.
And we never have our phones on a ring anyway. We never hear them. So like why even have like ringtones, you know? I think it's just so much more satisfying, and I have that written down because we had that here, and it's like I just love that. I think it's just so much better. So anyway, so we finally got through the prologue, and now we're in Boston 20 years later. I don't have a whole lot written down here.
I only have a couple things.
So we can go through it pretty quickly. We start off with a kid. We establish Boston. He has a whole little scene where they try and check him for the virus. They try and make it safe. Decent scene. I feel like I again could have been done differently. I don't know that why, you know, they wanted to show us a Boston like establishing shot, you know, and show us this quarantine zone, and I get it, and show us what happens here, you know. I don't know. Did we need the kid intro? I think it's a little weaker than it needed to be.
Yeah, I didn't love it. I almost think it would have been more interesting to just start on these people burning bodies and like all this signage. It's like if you're coughing and you're sneezing, like all this stuff, and then you
which
get to
is
meet
almost
Joel,
how
you
it
get
kind
the
of like
kid.
starts. That's how you get it normally.
Yeah,
you know, this was all just to show us like how they test people and like what happens.
But I don't need that either, because we see how they test people. They test.
Well, what was interesting is like I feel like if you'd asked me to do this, I would have started with like Fedra like rating some people, you know, and maybe there was a kid there or something. Inside the quarantine zone,
or like catching the people that they hang later.
Yeah, because that establishing shot of Boston, it's showing us a lot. I don't think it's as good as like later on we get the shot of Boston, like city proper.
Yeah,
I don't think it's like as like cool or whatever, like for us to see it. Like I don't think it was that important.
I didn't need this one.
Yeah, that's fine. You know, we see Joel's life. We see that he's he works with Tess, but I mean, Tess is also doing her own thing at this point. We get cool scenes between her and Robert, where it showcases like Tess. He's scared of Tess.
I have notes on that, so I'm ready whenever you are.
Yeah, I mean, besides seeing Joel like where he's at, he's tossing bodies straight. He's a smuggler. We see him trying to like get a hold of Tommy. He hasn't been able to. This is his life now, but he's clearly putting together a plan to get out of here. That's a little bit of a change, but like we see that he's capable. We see that he's clearly like got the run of the place. Like he can kind of do whatever he wants. It's really interesting. It's a different Joel too than we had before. Not much more to say, I think, about that. But we get to Tess, we're getting a little bit more of her. And yeah, so she's what we feel like she's been beat up by Robert, and she has, by Robert's gang, but not in this interrogation style thing. He's actually the one kind of being in the hot seat.
Yeah, like put on his heels from the first shot of that scene, which is him in the chair with the interrogation light. It looks like it's shining on him. Yeah. The first time I watched it, it almost took me a second to realize that Tess was the one in holding. And again, down to body language, the way that she's like taking up space in her chair, her lean, her like nonchalance, and his pacing and his like anxious tics. I just have written, that the intro to Tess makes me feel like the other guy's being interrogated, and she already has such a like sturdy, like take control vibe to her, which also I have written right after that. I love that Tess just rolls Joel over to make room for herself and then makes him the little spoon. I just feel like that's Tess's vibe. Like she's here, she can handle it, and she's gonna handle it.
Yeah, when they also make Joel out to be this beast,
like a pit bull,
that needs to be like controlled, and she's the only one that can control him.
She's got the leash,
which is really interesting. He's like the Minotaur, like chained up, you know. We don't get to see any of that, but we get to see like how they're like later the next morning when she tells him like he sees her damaged and what, you know, he's like, who did this? She's like, I need you to calm down. Yeah. First off, I don't need, this is what I need right now, you know, because we know, so we see like how people react to what Joel has been this past 20 years.
Right.
Which again, I think would have been more interesting had we got to see more of Joel, like in the prologue, in terms of like being like kind of more of like a loving guy, you know? Yeah, but yeah, it's just an interesting thing. So, and also in between all this, we're cutting back and forth, and this is when we get to finally meet Ellie, which is going to be our other main character of this entire series, played by Bella Ramsey. I've already told you this to you, but the moment I was already on board with Bella Ramsey. I think she's a great actress. We obviously all loved her in Game of Thrones. I think that she's going to be perfect for the part. But even if I had any doubts about Bella Ramsey playing Ellie, the moment she says motherfuckers, I was like, oh, that's Ellie. It's almost, it feels exactly like her.
Dude, yeah.
It almost sounds exactly like her in times, like where I don't know what it is, but there's just every time she says like the F word or a curse word, I'm just like, that's Ellie.
I almost feel like her and Ashley, like where we put fuck in our mouths, like where her U sits when she can really like pop that U. I can't do it because that's not how I say fuck. I like pop my K, but I feel like she really emphasizes like the ucker part, and it just, yeah, she slaps. She's so good.
This is one of those things where it's like, did Ashley give her pointers, or did they talk
like
about
did they do just a little bit of coaching where she found the register, because she's even saying it in the right register.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they like got into the audition rooms and they just like blindfolded themselves. It was like, hey, everyone that came in, they just said,
all 100 people, they zoomed.
I just want you to give me shit, damn motherfucker, and then
you're free to leave.
Great.
I wish every audition was like that.
That's probably, I think that's how it was done.
Like, done.
And clearly, and Bella Ramsey won it because there's no other
Yeah.
person that could have done it the way that she did
Absolutely.
it. But yeah, we get to learn more about her and her relationship with Marlene. This is a different introduction than we get to Ellie in the game. She's chained up. Something's clearly wrong. We're going to learn more about that later. We know now that she's bitten. But if you didn't know that, you're kind of piecing that together. And it's just really interesting. So, did you like this introduction to Ellie?
No. Which is not to say I don't like it in the scope of the show.
Sure.
For me, the most fun way to meet Ellie would have been later when she comes like charging out of the room with her knife. Like that would have been.
Which is the way we meet her.
Oh, God damn it. Is it? Okay. Yeah. So basically the game did it better. But yeah, so there's a lot of things in the show that I feel that they're doing and they're including to ingratiate you to these characters that we're going to spend time with. The prologue, like the way that we're giving you information, the grandma twitching in the background. They're handing me information that I almost want to be like, throw me in it.
Yeah.
Throw me in it. I'll pick it up. Like, don't worry.
Yeah.
So I think it would have been a little more fun to see that. But I think part of the reason why we don't need the Marlene Ellie connection in the game is because that's not the point. You're still trying to learn how to like walk and like pick things up and build shivs and stuff. So if you have too much information, you're not paying attention to it anyway. Whereas here, it has a little bit more weight when you realize that already first episode, there's already a string of people trying to take care of this special person.
Yeah.
But no, I would have rather just seen her like barrel ass out of the door with a knife and be like, that's my Ellie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could get to that pretty quickly. We know that like Joel needs a battery. He's trying to get a truck to go visit Tommy. We do know that he's been communicating with him. This is also a difference from the game where like Tommy, we don't know what happened to Tommy, but we do know like he was part of the Fireflies and he's gone. You know, we just haven't seen him in 20 years or maybe even not longer. Maybe like Joel hasn't seen him like in here. He hasn't heard from him in 3 weeks. In the game, he probably hasn't heard from him in longer.
Yeah.
And Joel's planning a trip to Wyoming. they talked about this in the podcast. This is a very specific change so that they can get Joel more agency in terms of like what he needed and wanted to do before Ellie interrupts that.
Yeah.
You know, like, so where Ellie's an interruption into like what he needs to get
into his already
into
forward
his
plan.
goal, you know? So I do like that change.
I like that too.
And I think we're going to get more of Tommy because of that. I think maybe, I don't know. But at the very least, I do like the change. Yeah, I don't know as much I'll say that, but they go through the sewers and stuff like that. We get a little moment where they have to like break open a door, to reminding me where you have to like hold open a door for
press what, triangle or something?
Yeah, square over and over again while the other game side of the door loads. But they find that Robert was trying to sell the battery that he had already sold Joel, but then he was trying to sell it again and take their money to Marlene and the Fireflies. Marlene, we forgot to mention, is played by the same actress who played Marlene in the game. It's the only one that is playing the same character. I love seeing her here. I love that someone gets to like be able to like replay the same character.
Yeah.
And I do love that we get like a little bit more of like what her kind of relationship was with Ellie beforehand, you know? Because Ellie trusts Marlene.
Right.
We're going to learn more about why later. But it has something to do with the Riley that they mentioned in a previous scene. But right now we don't really understand. I will say she's not her mother.
Yeah, if that wasn't obvious, that's not her mom.
But yeah, and then yeah, Joel, they stumble upon a bunch of dead bodies. The battery was broken anyway; it wasn't going to work. And Marlene is hurt, and then Ellie comes bursting out the door to try and protect her, and there's Joel just shrugging her off,
Just like bat her to the ground.
And Marlene says, "We can't take Ellie, but we need to take Ellie, and now you're going to take Ellie. And we'll give you a battery, we'll give you a car, we'll give you weapons, we'll give you anything you need to do whatever you need to do."
I actually thought that was a little odd because we don't spend any time getting to know how she knows of them.
I like that. I think that, I mean, it's clear. So we forgot to mention, she's the leader of the Firefly. She's a rebellion leader. Like, but they've been in Boston for a while, and Joel's brother was a Firefly. Tommy was a Firefly. So Joel knows Marlene. Tommy tried to get Joel to join the Fireflies. This is probably laid out later. I'm getting into, I guess, spoiler territories, unfortunately. But like he does mention that like, you're the one that ruined my brother. They know, that's why they know each other. And like, and they're smugglers. Like, Joel doesn't work for Fedra. He doesn't, like, he works for anyone, and he works in the background. And then like, he's gonna have interactions with the other different factions that are out there. Robert's gang, the Fireflies, the Fedra, you name it. He's got connections with all of them.
I guess I just thought, you know, if I think that you, Mattias, ruined like my brother's life, ruined my relationship with my brother, and then you're like, hey, I need you to go transport this girl, I'm going to be like, can I even trust you? How does he know? Like, that's another reason why I like the fact that they plant the fact that he's in communication with Tommy, that Tommy's kind of missing, that he has to get somewhere, because that motivates the choice of like, why would you take Ellie?
Well, they don't
if you're
know
a smuggler.
Well, they don't know that they can trust her. And that's why they go and talk about it. And then he does know that, like, if she's offering a truck, then it usually means a decommissioned Fedra truck, which is going to be better than what we had before. We know that the Fireflies have weapons. He knows what he knows.
Yeah. It's just nice. Like, I just guess I wondered, how does he know that, like, she's worth her word?
They've had interactions before. I think it's just like the ideas. Like, you recognize that they've had interactions before from the first time that they meet. You got to have that. You can't always establish every single one.
No, I know. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's something I noticed and I was like, well, I already have background information. I played the games. Like, I'm fine accepting this. But
even in the game,
we spend
even
so
in
much
the game, we
time
know.
showing so much time. We spend far more time showing Ellie's relationship with her, which I think is fine. But then we didn't.
Yeah, but in the game, when they first meet Marlene, she's already wounded and they know her.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we get.
Right.
Like, it's the exact same scenario when we meet.
I know. I just feel like they spent so much time fleshing out all the other things that are like that I'm like, why didn't we get like any other sort of interaction?
I don't think we need it.
Well, you didn't think we needed a lot of stuff that was in this episode.
Well, what we did get was Ellie and Joel both being like, hell no, and then her saying, I'm not going with them. Which, if you had, again, blindfolded me and like, I would have thought I was hearing Ellie from the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
When she says, I'm not going with them. I love how the moment, my favorite moment is when he points the gun at her and Marlene immediately says, no, not her. You know, so it clues him into something.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, don't point it at her, point it at me. Also, what I find interesting is this is something that I would notice. Maybe not everyone else would notice. Joel's not planning on shooting anyone because his finger's not even on the trigger. He's got very strong trigger discipline. He's got it right on the side of the gun where it needs to be. He wasn't going to shoot Ellie. He was just reminding her that I have a gun, you know? So I like that, even though it's everyone else can see a gun pointed at her or whatever in this like certain direction. If you look closely, you can tell that like he's probably not planning on shooting Ellie, and you want it if your finger's not on the trigger.
That's insane.
Yeah.
No, I didn't see that at all. But also the entire time I was paying more attention to Bella Ramsey's floor acting.
Yeah.
Because she looks fucking feral.
Sure.
She looks like a cornered dog.
Oh, we'll get to
like,
that later.
Oh, to this?
To her being her other mannerisms.
Oh,
for
her being fucking feral. But I just loved like on the ground the entire time. Like she's like she's a dog caught in a trap, and she's like, okay, I want to get my knife. Like, and like the fear that she has, but then the fact that she still engages. Like, she's a fucking animal. She's raised in this post-pandemic world, and she is wild. And I loved her, all of her little like back and forth, like trying to get the knife, watching him, like looking out the corner of her eye. I was like, dude, this is awesome.
And this is Neil brings this up in the podcast that this is the inciting incident of the entire show. Took a while for us to get there, but this is the inciting incident for Joel. Most people mistake it, as he said, as being like Sarah, but like, and I don't know why, because I understand where Neil's coming from. It's the moment when Joel meets Ellie. You know, this is their first interaction, and it doesn't. And they both, and I like how they did it here. There's more animosity between them two than I think there even was in the game, and I kind of like that. And I like that we know that that's probably going to be shed or destroyed by the rest of the series. But yeah, they try and get her out of Boston. You know, they successfully sneak her out. We do get a moment where she like cracks a code in the radio, and she does the moment where it's like, which is again beat for beat from the game. Your watch is broken. I love this shot afterwards that they just like linger on Pedro, where he just sit there and just like not even notice it, you know, like not say anything, or not. He's just like, and you just wonder what's going on through his, what's going on through his head, but like, even that you didn't kind of get. I wasn't expecting. I knew she was going to say. I knew when she was going to say your watch is broken, but I did not expect them to linger on Pedro Pascal for that shot. That's one of those things where I'm like, I love when they like give me the moment that we want, but also surprise me with something else.
Yeah.
I don't remember how it was done in the game, but for me, seeing an actor in that moment is just so good, even if he's not doing anything.
Yeah.
There's a choice made there for them to do that, and I loved it. But yeah, she cracks the code about the 80s music, and it's a fun little moment. It's almost beat for beat, except without the radio, Well,
I also liked the way, this might have been the podcast that they mentioned, the fact that she is showing fear when he wakes up and she's looking out the window. You can tell that she's scared and how he leans in and like still has that fatherly instinct with her. But I really liked the way that the difference between the way Ellie seeks reassurance versus when Sarah was seeking reassurance from her father. When Sarah was in the truck, she was just asking questions like, what's going on? This is like being obvious about her discomfort. And the way that Ellie sought reassurance was so much more like aggressive and direct. She was like, you know where we're going, so we're going to be okay. Even though we know like Ellie is afraid right now and she is self-soothing by saying, you're doing this. And then he gives her that gift of saying like, yes, we're going to like, yeah, I know where we're going. We're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that was really warm for me. You know what I mean? Because like Ellie doesn't trust Joel enough to like ask him for that reassurance and show him that vulnerability. And Joel is not in a place to show any softness or vulnerability either, but it's still shown, received, respected. Like, I really liked that.
Mm-hmm. So they do get out of the city, out of Boston, and they run into another Fedra agent, and he holds them at gunpoint. This is the same Fedra agent he'd ran into before. Gave him drugs. He's supposed to be doing the job with him, but he's like, you weren't supposed to be out here, and now we're gonna do this by the book. Shit goes wrong when Ellie decides to stab him.
That's our girl.
And then we also learn that she's been bitten, but it's 3 weeks old. At the same time, Joel has a post-traumatic reaction, and beats the shit out of this guy. Again, varies. It's similar but different in that these Fedra agents weren't connected at all before, and this wasn't a direct correlation between Ellie and Sarah. In the way that happened, but they made it a very direct correlation, very clear correlation when they flash back to the night Sarah died and being confronted with the guy with the flashlight, a soldier, getting ready to shoot at them and shoot at Ellie, and he snaps. You know, Craig Mazin talks a little bit about this and in the podcast, something that like I noticed, I didn't understand what I was noticing. He talks about it both in the after the episode and in the podcast, but here he talks about the reason for that like flashback, and then also like to showcase the difference between how Ellie reacts to violence and how Sarah reacts to violence. And he uses a word here that you use a lot. The first time I heard anyone using the word activated was you talking about when the dog is like, or the cat is like, or when I get activated or something, like someone's getting activated, you know? And I'd never heard anyone say that before you. And then here he says, Ellie, seeing what's happening with Joel, gets activated. To me, I noticed that it was a weird, you see like her like slinking and then like the lightning in the background, like showcasing her. I didn't know what I was witnessing there until he like put words to that. What did you think of this moment?
It is something that I caught in her body language because I keep saying like Ellie's a little bit feral. She has like animalistic qualities in her that haven't been beaten out of her by like society yet. And the way that, yeah, Joel does great. All those acting beats are wonderful. He's beating the shit out of this guy. But then watching Bella Ramsey see it, want to see more of it. Like she changes her point of view so she can see more of the violence that's happening. And in the podcast, I think it was, he was saying that she's almost enjoying watching someone like fight for her, essentially.
Yeah.
But I didn't that wasn't my read when I first saw it. My first read was that like she not only has she been exposed to violence, she's comfortable around violence, and she feels better now that she knows she's with someone that I feel like she's on the same page with.
Yeah.
Because if she stabbed that guy first, like she's dangerous.
This is where we're getting again to the differences between the two girls in the show, especially in terms of like where I said earlier, Sarah, like seeing the knife, rubbing the knife, she never got a chance to be Ellie.
Mm-hmm.
In another world, it's hard to talk about these kinds of things, but like in another alternate universe, like if she had survived, she may have grown up to become someone like Ellie, because she would have grown up in like
or someone like Tess.
Yeah. And who knows, right? And so like this is kind of like Ellie's also like knife moment, right? And I go back to the hallway where like Marlene says, Joel, I know what you're capable of. And then Ellie is like, what is he capable of?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And now she sees it.
Mm-hmm.
Now she sees what he's capable of, and she's interested in that. And I don't know how to feel. That's dangerous. I don't know how to feel about that.
Yeah.
Even in the video game, there was a little bit of an innocence to Ellie, and we're going to probably see more of that later on, but the fact that like she does like activate with these like moments, because this is the world that she lives in, right? And not only that, she's activating to Joel is now interesting her
mm-hmm.
in a way that she wasn't interested before, and she hasn't met anyone like Joel. Yeah, pretty scary, I think. And they framed it specifically to be kind of like scary.
Yeah, I liked it.
Like, this is not this like same little girls that we've met with like Sarah,
Right.
But they get out of Boston. We see the nice shot of the one skyscraper leaning against another. We get an 80s song, which we now know means trouble, from Bill and Frank. And they're walking in, and as we hear the screams of more infected, that just gets me excited.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of like, again, I overall, as much as like I was critical of like certain changes and things that I wasn't like a fan of, when I think more about them, like I still enjoyed this throughout. It was still a lot of fun.
Yes.
I'm like immersed in the world, and this was like, and I love seeing like those skyscrapers and hearing it. Like I'm like, this is, yeah, we're on it. We're definitely like, I'm all in. Any more thoughts before?
Just a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that Ellie actually heard the song on the radio?
No.
You think she just knew that was an 80s song and did it to get information?
Yeah, I mean, she had the big book in front of her
I know.
of Billboard's charts, so I think
She just picked a song.
we
and
were
went
just
with it.
showing her being smart, yeah, and getting Joel.
I just wondered.
It's not going to be the last time either.
No, of course not. I just wondered what the implications would be if like something really bad is happening and they keep playing like 80s songs. I was wondering if they were just transmitting like shit is progressively getting worse. I thought that she was just fucking with Joel as well originally, but when I went back and watched it a second time, I was like, wouldn't it be interesting if that's part of why she's a little bit scared when Joel wakes up, is because she's been left alone for like X amount of hours while he's napping on the couch, and then like this radio comes on, it's an 80s song, she doesn't know what it is, like just
Sure.
I
want to talk about, is this a good video game adaptation?
Okay.
At the end of this episode, I think it's going to be hard to say, but I think to me, we're getting into a point where like, I think it's clear. We've heard this already over from other people who have seen like either the entire series or the first 4 episodes or whatever, but this is an amazing video game adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk about like why they think that and why I think that might actually be a true statement.
Great.
As I said earlier, adaptations are hard. We've seen that like some changes work for us, some changes don't, I think at the end of the day, this is an easy game to adapt because again, they're basically just taking the same story. Most video game adaptations fail, I think, because they try and like take the world or something, and then they just try and put a different story onto these characters or something.
I raised my hand. Nobody can see that, but I raised my hand. So that's why I almost feel like that's one of the reasons why I don't think Uncharted worked for me, is because it felt like they gave like an Uncharted flavor to a typical like blockbuster movie instead of making an Uncharted movie.
Well,
I don't know how to make that make sense.
I don't think they made a good Uncharted movie, and I don't think they made a good action adventure film either.
Mattias hates the movie.
I think that like at the very least you start with that. Most video games are hard to adapt because there is no story.
Right.
You know, when we think about games like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, what
Mario
else?
Kart.
Sonic, they adapted, you know, the Mario Brothers, you know, like they don't really have like a beginning to end, like focus on like story. It's about mechanics. It's about getting the goal, you know, beating the boss, you know.
Right.
The most recent version of a video game thing I didn't watch was the Halo thing. And the first Halo came out way early 2000s or maybe even earlier. But the Halo, again, I don't think followed any structure that was laid out in the video game. And that was one where you could have just again done a series like about Halo. But again, they decide to make new characters. They decide to put a different story on it, you know, and they only pay homage to these things. We don't do that with other things. Like when we adapt stuff, besides the superhero comics, which Marvel does, right? They're still adapting from things and they change things. But like most of the time when we adapt like a book, like we're adapting it like from the page.
Yeah.
You know, we're not like suddenly making things up per se. I mean, they make up things all the time, but they, you know, we go to it because we want to see what they took from the book, you know, and what they left out, you know?
Right.
And some things have to change for a medium and some things don't. And I think what usually makes a bad adaptation of a book or a comic book or any video game is when you when you give those moments that were from those original mediums, but then like you either gloss over them or you don't give them their like due. Every time, what I think is great about The Last of Us so far and what makes it a good adaptation is that it's not afraid to give you the moments. You were like, are these shot for shot? And some of the times they're close, but they're not.
It feels like it.
You know, and when they're not shot for shot, there's a reason for it. And also like there's like subtle changes, but they're still going to give you the moment. They're still going to give you what matters from this scene, right? Again, this is an easy game to adapt. But despite all the changes they make, the changes that they make are meant to like fill out the world in ways that we didn't get from the game. Because normally when we're playing the game, we have like one perspective that we're seeing the game from. I say normally, it doesn't always happen that way, but like we get a scene with Marlene and we get a scene with Ellie as well, like early on, whereas normally we wouldn't. The reason why we don't meet Ellie in the video game until she tries to jump Joel is because we're in Joel's perspective.
Yeah, it's linear. He doesn't know she exists.
Yeah. And so that but here we get to see little moments beforehand and as well as like scenes that didn't exist, you know, and things that fill out the world. And I think, and again, we get like a longer prologue, we get longer with Sarah. And I think that's great because we're going to continually like compare Sarah, I think, to Ellie in this show. Whereas I don't know that we did that as much in the game because we don't get as much time with Sarah, you know, because it's not necessarily like really about that. It's just about Joel, you know? And so I do love that like here we're going to like pay off certain themes that like were present, but like are like more apparent in this medium than they were in the game. But while they make those changes, they're still giving you like the good moments, you know?
Mhm.
They're still surprising you, right? They're like, oh, instead of just having it where a truck hits the car, why not have it be a plane crashes into the
Why don't we
city?
crash a fucking plane?
like that's a great change, but everything before that is still very much, you get those moments, you know,
Right.
and they don't gloss over them, you know?
Mhm.
They still give you the scene between Sarah and Joel getting the watch fixed or getting the present.
Mhm.
It's different, but the moment that matters, it's still there.
Mhm.
You know, it's almost like easy for Craig Mazin. You know, he's a good screenwriter, but like I don't know if we can give him too much credit considering like they kept a lot of the writing that was from the original game. You know, so I think that's why this makes this a good adaptation. Not to mention like a good video game adaptation, because most of the time the video game adaptations are afraid to like actually give you like the characters or the things that they want, as they'll cast someone younger, someone hot, and they'll cast another person that doesn't fit the character at all because he can sell tickets to a movie, and then they'll put him into a generic story, and then nothing resembles the video game at all.
Yeah. Like, was I reading who were the 2 actors that they considered for Joel before? I know Matthew McConaughey was one of them. And
I honestly don't know because I didn't read up on that, but I do know that like I heard that Jensen Ackles went out for the role, and to be completely fair, I think he would have been perfect. I'm not a Supernatural fan. I don't watch a lot of Jensen Ackles things. I loved him in The Boys though, and I'm like, you know what? If he had played Joel, I could have been behind that. I don't dislike Pedro.
I love him in it.
Mm-hmm.
And the resemblance sometimes is like striking. Like game Joel and screen Joel. Like I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, oh shit, that was a great choice. Jensen Ackles, no offense, Jensen Ackles, if you're listening to this, he's really pretty.
Sure.
I don't think Joel is pretty.
No, it would be a different Joel.
So I like that they went with like, Pedro, you're super hot too if you're listening to this. But you went with someone who's less stereotypically like attractive.
You could change that in makeup. I mean, look at Anna. Anna
Torf's hot also if you're listening to this.
She's extremely attractive. They make her, I mean, don't get me wrong, they just make her the same as what Tess was. And what I love about the world is that like these women don't have time for makeup and bullshit or like whatever, you know?
Fuck yeah.
And she's just being like regular person.
He's a fucking human being. Yeah. Not here for your opinion.
And I love that about Tess.
Yeah.
You know? I love that from the like original game as well. She's not represented as like, but if you fix up Anna Torv, like we see her in Mindhunter.
No, yeah, you're right.
Like a very different person. You know? I think it just comes down to like it's the world, right? Yeah. And how they're presented. Joel could be pretty hot. He's just not.
No, Joel is a fucking hottie. All I'm saying is Jensen Ackles is, again, if you're listening to this, love you, very pretty.
Yeah.
And I really like the gruffy, like hardened, well, like seen some shit kind of Joel energy that Pedro brings to it. Because he also cleans up very nicely. We've seen the man rocking a suit. He's a stone cold hottie too. But yeah, I don't know. There's just something about like his look and his energy that I'm like, I don't see anyone else now like stepping into this.
Yeah. Well, single-handedly carrying the torch for the Lone Wolf and Cub storyline, like we had with the Mandalorian and now with,
incredible.
Now with The Last of Us.
The Child.
So we didn't get like a proper like next week on kind of thing. We got like an overall like series, like this is what's coming. I'm curious like if there's anything you want to say about like full spoilers. If you're listening, leave now or whatever. We're going to talk about the game and what's coming up. Anything you're anticipating for next week or upcoming that like this particular episode has gotten you excited for or whatever?
Bill and Ted?
Frank.
Sorry, Frank. Really excited to get to see them like in more entirety, because obviously
Yeah.
we see the actors that were cast as
Well,
those
we
characters.
don't get Frank at all.
At all, exactly.
It's-
And fun fact, I forget the name of the song, but the 80s song that they play at the end
Mhm.
is like about a gay relationship, written about a gay relationship. So for those of you who don't, like, it's heavily implied that Frank and Bill are lovers in the game, even though we never meet the other half of the partnership.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of excited to see like that relationship play out now.
So the Christians die in this universe, but
3
the
nails,
gays will live on.
1 cross, forever, forgiven.
Forgiven.
Long live the gays. But yeah, so I'm really excited about that. And I'm also excited to get, so I also watched you play through the little mini game.
Left Behind. I don't think we're going to, if they do it the way I want them to do it, the Left Behind DLC was originally supposed to take place when Joel is sick.
Right.
And I hope, even though they keep teasing it, and they might showcase it next episode, they might just open with Ellie's prologue, for all we know. I hope they just wait until Joel's thing. I don't know if that's going to even come this game, or this season, I should say.
Well, it's definitely going to come this season. We know the actress, and we've seen like scenes of Bella Ramsey and
No.
What's her name?
I'm saying, like, I don't know if we get to the point where, like, he is sick. And
season 1 will cover the game. So I was
the
reading
whole game.
the whole game.
I just don't know.
I was reading an interview between the two creators, and they were saying that the first season is the entirety of the first game, and that season 2 will be the second game. But
wow.
they're hoping to split that across 2 seasons, because they don't want to submit to filler, but with then the Abby storyline being integrated in, that they don't think they can do the full game justice in 1 season. The director specifically was like, I do not want to overstay my welcome. And I really like that as a person, because I hate when content just starts eating itself. And it's like, well, we're popular, so we have to go for 9 seasons. It sounds like they're going to be really like authentic and beholden to the source material. And I think that they'll take the exact amount of time to really flesh out that universe with no more, no less than what's necessary. So season 1 will be the entire first game, which means we're going to see some shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think unfortunately, I think this is for me in terms of what next week. What I'm anticipating, not too much. I can't wait to meet Bill and Frank and see that dynamic and see what's going on with their life, because we didn't get a whole lot of that before.
That might be a little later. Episode 3, maybe.
We might just get straight to it, because there's not a whole lot that they have to do to get there.
We just have to spoiler.
Actually, not
Tess.
true. That's the thing. It's like, I think Tessa is
So
unfortunately,
I think she'll get an episode.
Anna Torv is gone after next
Right.
week, unfortunately.
So I think we'll get a full episode of like falling in love with Tess.
Do you think
more of the
do you
Tess
think
and
it's going to
Joel.
end with her death?
I think it'll be close enough to the end, and then maybe a little bit of not a cliffhanger, but like something to set us up.
That
for the
might
next
make sense.
episode.
This episode was technically 2 episodes. It was an hour and 40-minute long premiere, or hour 20 minutes.
It's an hour and 27 minutes clocked.
I feel like it's less than 2 episodes then. I don't know. So the next episode's probably going to be, it's definitely going to be shorter, but it doesn't seem like that much shorter.
No.
So they're definitely not going to, yeah, you might be right. We're not going to get to Bill and Frank. I think it would make sense to end on Tess's death. They're going to go through some clicker territory. They're going to have some like struggling of figuring out, like, learning more about the world, and Ella's going to learn more about the outside world, and then they're going to get to their destination, and Tessa's going to die, and they're going to have to get out of there.
Yeah.
That's probably...
and then that sets us up for the true, like, Joel and Ellie.
Yeah, because
Justin.
now they have to get her... Now he has to get her through... across the...
Yeah. Because I have when does Joel figure out that Ellie can, like, save people?
He doesn't.
Not until he gets to the hospital and figures that out.
We're under the entire assumption that the reason that he's bringing her to the Fireflies is because she's immune and they might be able to like build a vaccine. That's the idea the whole time.
I just wondered if do you think in the next episode, do you think we'll get that information as the audience?
I think yeah, we will, because like he hasn't had a chance yet to like process, but this is I want to say it's just kind of like implied, you know, like when they learn that she's bitten, like we're going to like learn more and more like about her immunity. And now he's going to know why she's so important, why he has to get her to the Fireflies. Like it's just kind of implied. It's because like there's going to be a vaccine. I think Tess is the one that convinces him. Yeah. Tess is the one that like we already kind of knew it, but like he wouldn't have cared. It's Tess that says like, no, like she can change things. Yeah. She becomes a believer first. Yeah. And it's and that's something that like is not the Tess that we normally recognize. I'm curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, me too. So I think we'll get some of that in the next episode as well.
So yeah. There it is. That's The Last of Us. When you find yourselves lost in the darkness,
look for the light. How many times did Ellie say fuck?
Oh, that's right. Okay, my Ellie fuck counter for this week was 6. She said fuck 6 times. Let's see if she can beat that. We'll do a total. I'm curious to see how many times she says fuck throughout the. Maybe I'll put a little like quick cut of her saying fuck all 6 times.
Fuck, motherfucker. That's a great idea.
Yep. Okay. Well, thanks for joining me in my house to talk about The Last of Us.
Also me and my house.
No, thanks everyone for listening. This has been a podcast with Shannon and Mattias. And, tell us what you think about The Last of Us. And we hope you enjoyed this and our conversations. And it wasn't too long. And join us next week as we talk about the next episode.